Hello everybody, and welcome to the inaugural video of the Pollinate or Die channel. And this is my trusty sidekick Susie here, who will be along for hopefully a whole bunch of the videos. Right, Susie? Okay, yeah, that's Susie. 13-year-old cat. So the primary focus of this channel is going to be on pollinator plants. Mainly perennials, a few annuals, and there will be an occasional renegade plant that works its way in, which is not necessarily a pollinator plant. After all, this is the South. I have 3 crepe myrtles. I think it's the law. This particular plant here is one of my biggest success stories on the gardening season. By the way, this is North Carolina Zone 7. Mexican sunflower. I'm letting the blossoms, blooms go to seed right now. Earlier in the year I deadheaded. You have to deadhead this, and this sucker is about 8 foot tall, maybe pushing 9 foot tall. That's what they look like after they play out. And here recently I have had, these aren't monarchs. These aren't monarchs here. There's me a monarch. I can come in here without spooking the little booger. Anyhow, I had very few monarchs this season until recently. This is October the 11th. Nice, bright, sunshiny, abnormally warm day, about 80 degrees on October the 11th. Had pretty much 0 monarchs all year, so I'm now catching some on the on their fall migration, which I'm very pleased with. Yesterday I had about a dozen monarchs at one time over here on this Mexican sunflower, which was fantastic. The Mexican sunflower has been just a bumblebee and bee and hummingbird attractant all year long, which when one plant can attract everything, absolutely everything, including goldfinches when the blooms go to seed, I mean, it's just an all-star plant. I'm not one of these people who are hung up too bad on everything has to be a native plant, because everything doesn't have to be a native plant. It would be better, far better, if we had fewer invasives, and I don't consider in this area anyway. Mexican sunflower, an invasive plant, but I better quit. There's another butterfly here that's, I can't get it. Anyway, there's a cloudless sulfur going around there. Probably didn't even see it, but there's quite a few of them out today. And down here at the bottom, as you can see, this Mexican sunflower is probably, it's probably an 1.25 inches in diameter. Right next to it we have a vanilla spice clethra, and this is its first season. It'll get quite a bit larger, probably 4 foot tall, 3 foot wide, have really nice creamy blooms on it. Supposedly this is its first season. It's not bloomed yet. So it actually has bigger blooms than the rest of the clethras. I have a couple of other clethras, and I'll show you them in a little while. This is some sort of salvia here. It's not getting enough sunshine back here. This astilbe. This area of the garden is more suited to this astilbe, since they do like shade, a certain amount of shade. And I've just left the panicles on there from all summer long, really. So this will be blooming again in the spring. It's real pretty pink blooms on it. Moving on, we have right here a Hyperium higcoat, otherwise known as St. John's wort. There's a lot of different cultivars of St. John's wort. From my understanding, though, the Hyperium higcoat version attracts pollinators better than the other ones. There's a video, if you'll just key in Hyperium higcoat here on YouTube, you'll see a video where 3 bees are just swimming in one of the blooms, just swimming in the pollen. Basically, they're just covered from head to toe with pollen. All right, moving on. We've got a couple of Nanho purple butterfly bushes here, and these are cuttings from the mother plant, as I call it. I'll show you in a little while. So right now these are only about 3 foot tall. The other plant gets about 6 foot tall every year. They need to be cut back down. Well, maybe not these so much because they're kind of small, but the older plant needs to be cut back down to about 1.5 feet every spring. This is an evening primrose right there. That was a $1 plant at Lowe's. It's not really showed me anything yet. I could tell the blooms did have a lot of pollen on it, but didn't seem to attract any pollinators, but I'm hopeful on it. Right here was just a afterthought. These are some wild, what? You okay? Talk to me. Tell me what's wrong. These are some wild asters, so they'll get quite large. I was lukewarm because we actually have wild asters around here anyway. So they just came just as a bare root practically, but they already have started to do stuff. Except that right there is a sunflower, not a Mexican sunflower, but I feed the birds. I have sunflowers coming up everywhere. All right, right here, this is a couple of years old. This is a Carolina jessamine on the arbor here. And it's not a jasmine. A lot of people will say Carolina jasmine. It is not a jasmine. It's a jessamine, entirely different plant. And it has yellow blooms in the spring. It was just starting to look good this past spring, and then we had a frost, and that kind of just annihilated them. So I don't really know how well it is going to do pollination-wise, but I'm hopeful on it. Here is dianthus. I'm not sure the exact variety, but it's zero pollination-wise. You'll find that I pretty much do perennials mainly, with a few annuals. And I lean toward the pollinators, but everybody's going to have a few that doesn't attract too many pollinators, I guess. This is Coreopsis right here, and it'll send up like 1 foot long stems in the spring and have really pretty yellow blooms. The only thing that really likes this much is your pearl crescent butterflies, it seems like. At least that's been my experience. They'll just be covered up with the pearl crescent butterflies and not much of anything else. And then mine goes dormant. It's supposed to bloom all year, but mine goes dormant and doesn't do anything else. Undoubtedly it has something to do with it being far too crowded. Right here we have, this has been a success story. I have 2 on each side of the little walkway here. This is Blue Hills Salvia, and it gets really huge and bushy and bloomy in the springtime. Just really nice blooms for a long time. Comes back, repeat blooms to a certain extent, and eventually, mine anyway, by midsummer kind of petered out on me. But it'll fill in this whole little area and be like 2.5 foot tall. They're really nice. This here is a turtlehead plant, which of course it's October the 20th. Everything almost has quit blooming. So this is quit blooming, turtlehead. The bumblebees actually do like it. They have to muscle their way in, open up the turtle heads and get in there. It's kind of interesting to watch them muscle their way in. Okay, and right here, and it is hard to discern anything without any blooms. This is already dying back, of course, and this are lollipop verbena. I tried to get some verbena bonariensis, and I couldn't get any seed to sprout, and garden centers don't carry it pretty much, and not around here. So they had a dwarf type of verbena bonariensis called lollipop And it's done reasonably well from a pollinator standpoint. Moving on, there's my Mexican sunflower again, which, as you can see, that's just one branch of it that's fell over here recently. Let's see how good this is a new camera. I want to see how it does up close. Oh yeah, I like this. It's not macro mode or anything, and it's doing pretty well there. Okay, right here we have a Montauk daisy, fairly recent installation here. It's supposed to get several foot tall and really 2 or 3 foot wide. Over here, it doesn't look like much, but this is a dozen or so milkweed, swamp milkweed right in here. Had to stake them. They did really well this year. They didn't bloom this year, and of course no eggs were laid on them because I guess no blooms in the first year. The monarchs just didn't discover them, but the orange aphids certainly discovered these things. Oh my God, you would not believe it, the thousands and thousands of orange aphids which were on these things. And this over here was, whatever how you want to look at it, some black adder agastache. I wish I had filmed it earlier. It was 3 foot tall and some gorgeous blooms on it, and the bumblebees absolutely loved it, and it stayed in bloom for like 2 months. I cut it way back here already, hoping I could get the cuttings to root. Maybe I might get 2. There's 2 that still may be viable. The rest of them I was too late in cutting it back. Too late in filming, too late in cutting it back. That's just the way it's been. Okay, moving on. Right here is a couple of years old plant that did bloom this year. It didn't bloom the year before. Sugar Buzz Monarda. This is the grape gumball. 0 pollination wise. I know the Monarda, and this is a compact plant compared to the other Monarda, as is sometimes the case. Your cultivars of native plants just do not do the same pollination wise. Yeah, if you're gonna get Monarda, get the Monarda fistulosa or Monarda didyma, probably a few other varieties, but don't get the Sugar Buzz gumball grape Monarda. And those other ones in the in this Buzz series of Monarda. Up here is a little bit of a problem area. I haven't ever got anything much to grow up here. Right now, I'm trying to get a hellebore to do. This is a shady area. Trying to get a hellebore to do something. As you can see, it looks kind of blighted out almost. It looked like that even before the recent cold weather. And this creeping sedum type of stuff here, it's far too shady for it. This thing used to be a waterfall for a pond. The pond used to be right here. It's now like a rock patio because a heron or whatever, a big long-legged bird, came by and ate half of my fish one day, and then over the period of the next month the other half just died. They were not as outgoing as they were before. They would not come to the top of the water. I don't think they ate nearly as much. Even though the food would sink to the bottom, they just acted depressed after half of them were eaten. And they just, all of them, one by one, they just began to die, and they all died out. Yeah? What is it, Susan? You gonna be okay? Okay. Yeah, talk to me. Right here is a May night salvia. I had to move it a couple of times this year because it was not getting enough sun either. I think I finally found a decent spot for it there. I have did a little bit of propagation on it. Hopefully I'll get some of those too. I'll get several more of those for next year and put them in the proper location. Right over here is, this is a blue border speedwell and Veronica. Now do not be misled by the scraggly poor appearance of it at the moment, because in the spring, this past spring, and hopefully next it'll even be better, it was just an amazing plant. I mean, it was probably 2.5 feet tall and a little bit wider than that, and had the most amazing blossoms or panicles, long blooms on it that you have ever seen. Just beautiful. And right here is a couple of daughter plants of it that I did from cuttings. Not much to look at now, but I think in the spring, I think they'll come back from the bottom and from the rosettes at the bottom and look really good. Right here we have all I know to tell you is it's a small red azalea. Blooms like a month later than most azaleas for some reason or another, and is really pretty, but doesn't attract any pollinators. Right here I've got, this is the really shady area. That's a little bit of dwarf mondo grass there. And we have some hostas. One of these varieties, it looks like maybe both of them, last a little longer in the season than other ones. I'll have to flash by on the bottom and tell you what these are because I can't remember. Not really a hosta fan, but sometimes that's all that will grow in the shade just about. There are a few other things, but hostas is what I've got. Anyhow, continuing on, right here we have the Gaillardia blanket flower. I need, probably next year I'll take this out of this pot and put it in the ground somewhere. This is one of the perennial varieties of blanket flower. Some varieties are not perennial. I think the ones that say Aristide on it, which this one did, I don't know the exact cultivar, but it's Aristide anyway, so it will come back next year. And we got right here, and you can't really see it, but this is a variety of honeysuckle, American variety, not the Japanese variety. I'm not going to plant the invasive Japanese variety that, I don't know, it came over here around 1900 or so and has just taken over the country along with lots of other invasive plants. I'm not one of these people who will, is just totally against non-natives. I plant natives when I can, but there's just so many beautiful plants which will provide all kind of nectar and pollen for our pollinators that are not natives, that I do plant a variety of plants. I lean toward either natives when I can or cultivars of natives when I can. For example, this right here is, okay, this is another Hyperion pigcoat, by the way. Yeah, we hear you. I have to pay attention to you, huh? Yeah. Turn around and smile for the camera. Yeah, okay. That's great. For example, as I was saying about natives, non-natives, cultivars, this is a cultivar of a cardinal plant. Lobelia cardinalis is the plant. It is the native plant. This is starship, red rose starship, or something like that. Red rose lobelia. Yeah, I think that's it. Red rose lobelia, and it's shorter than the a native cardinal flower plant, but this one had about 3 times more blooms on it. So it does have a reason for being, and the hummingbirds did check it out a few times. They didn't check it out as much as they did the regular cardinal flower, though. Right here is a Caryopteris, black night Caryopteris, and oh my gosh, the bumblebees absolutely love this plant. I mean, every now and then it's like they come in really fast, dive bombing it, and then just stop on a dime on the blossoms. It's kind of amazing to watch because they just do love it so much, and it will bloom for a couple of months in the summer maybe. But I wish I do have a variety on order that's supposed to bloom further into the start later and bloom further into the fall, which I'll be planting in a different location. So we'll see how that goes. Okay, moving on here, we have right here. This is another another native honeysuckle, or a cultivar of a native honeysuckle. Let me just back up here, give a little bit of an overview of things. What I hope is to get a honeysuckle started right there on this pole, and then there is a pole right there. Get another honeysuckle started on that pole, and then, you know, kind of have them meet in the center there. They're the same kind. All right, here we have this is Homestead Purple Verbena right here, and it had some really nice purple blossoms on it this spring. Didn't do a lot of repeat blooming, a little bit, but it's so much larger now than it was when I planted it. It was small, and now it just took over this whole corner, so I think it'll really be pretty this coming spring. Really, this past spring, the only thing much which fooled around with it was your hummingbird moths. And I've noticed that about the hummingbird moths. Lots of times when I've got a plant that nothing else seems to like, the hummingbird moths will gravitate towards it. Right here is the cardinal plant, native species of cardinal plant, and it comes back from little rosettes at the bottom every year. This rosette is not as big as it was last year, to tell the truth of the matter, so at this particular time, so maybe it's not going to do as good, I don't know. Here is another clethra. This is a dwarf variety called 16 Candles clethra. It bloomed, it attracted a lot of small type of pollinators, maybe a few wasps, hoverflies, sweat bees, that type of thing. I did not see too much honeybee and bumblebee activity on it. And the odd thing is, that's a dwarf variety. If you'll look right over here at this one, this also is the same plant, which of course also is a dwarf variety, but it has broken its dwarfness, and it's getting real tall. I do not know exactly what kind of characteristics this plant will now have. I do know for some odd reason it has some berries on it. I don't know if clethra plants normally have berries on it, but those almost look like beauty berries from a beautyberry bush. And the way it looks, it is coming from the plant. Sometimes when you see what you think are berries on a plant that shouldn't have berries, it's not really from the plant. It's a wasp gall is what it is. But this seems to be coming from the plant. And let's see what happens when I can take this from here. See, that is very berry-like, I would say. I don't think that's any kind of wasp larva at all. So it has no odor to it really, and I definitely am not going to stick it in my mouth because I might die. Okay, moving on. Right here we have the ones that's still blooming. This is asters. The ones which are still blooming a little bit are a variety called Radon's Favorite, which they will get 3 foot tall, and unless something else outcompetes them, they'll fill in this whole little area right here. What's going on here in this spot, I have another aster up front that did fill in the whole area. This is a woods blue aster, which attracts a fair number of pollinators of just all manner of kind, but it does not bloom into frost at all. I mean, this has not been blooming in 6 weeks really, so it kind of petered out fairly quickly. Well, it bloomed early, so probably as long as most asters do, but it just started earlier. I'm hoping that I can have half of it woods blue and half of it Radon's Favorite. Anyway, that's the goal. Okay, right here we have in the pots, which I will have to take inside. This is zone 7. This is a cigar plant, which the hummingbirds just dearly, dearly love. And I kind of cater to the hummingbirds, if you want to know the truth of the matter, more so even than I do the bumblebees and the honeybees. I love hummingbirds. Every year, unfortunately, the last few years, I've only had a pair of them. Occasionally, I'll have, a couple of extra ones show up, like 4 total, and the home pair chases the other ones away. Eventually, it takes them a few days, but they get it done. Eventually, I just go down to 2. I'm hoping if I have enough plants that they like, in addition to the hummingbird feeders, that they'll just hang in there. So I've got a couple of these cigar plants here. They're a zone 9 plant. I'm going to take these inside and do cuttings off of them. And here I have a candy corn plant. It did not bloom out till last week, and the hummingbirds left the week before. I'm assuming they'll like it. Can't say for certain, but the blossoms on it are really twice as large as a cigar plant blossoms, twice as much mass, to maybe 3 times as much mass. So the hummingbirds should love this plant, in theory. Right here we have Mexican heather, which the honeybees, bumblebees, and especially the carpenter bees have just absolutely loved this year. I did cuttings off of it. This is also, I believe, a zone 9 plant. The cuttings have already rooted, so I won't even bring this in. I'll just let it stay out here and start new next year. There's a little Caryopteris. This here was a disappointment. You can't tell much about it right now. This is a Houstonian ageratum. It got 2 foot taller than that, had nice purple blooms on the top of it, but the pollinators did not like it. And here we have, of course, the ever omnipresent in everyone's gardens, autumn joy sedum. Everybody has trouble with them flopping, including me, so I put a bunch of rocks around mine, and that's really a good way to do, a great way to do. If you have one of these things, which nobody does, except for I got one. This is some kind of fiberglass type of industrial coupling of some sort. I can just imagine it being in the inner workings of a factory floor somewhere. This thing is about 3 foot in diameter, and oh my gosh, it does just a wonderful job, and it looks good in the garden on these autumn joy sedum. I wish I had a lot more of them, but my brother got that one for me. He works with a building type of company, and they tore down a plant, and that had that coupling right there. This here was a big disappointment. This is remnants of this is Enduroscape verbena. That's what it is, Enduroscape verbena. Right here is some sort of canna lily, and of course it's a 0 on pollination scale, but I think it draws them in though. I mean, as showy a plant as this thing is, it does have a purpose pollination wise anyway. If you've got other pollinator plants, this will draw them in. I do believe it's bound to, as ever present as these blooms are all year. And if it doesn't frost them out, it's going to have even more blooms there. And the foliage, it does have a tendency to sun scald when in the hot part of the summer. The edges and tips of the leaves will get sun scald, but other way, even then it still is pretty. So it's a nice plant, and it spreads. This came from just one small cutting. You can see right there where it's just marching right on up here. It'll have to stop eventually, but on the other side I'm going to have to block it off because I don't want it to go any further. All right, here we have another plethora. This is a ruby spice plethora. So it's just in its first year. We'll see how it does. It's got a long way to go. And this is some sort of aster. I can't remember. I bought numerous asters this year, and I can't really remember the names of them. This really had some electric looking blooms. I mean, just electric pink or magenta, or it was really a bright type of color. We have another Gaillardia over here. It's another Aristod type of variety. This particular cultivar is Arizona Shades, and it's really pretty. The pollinators like it pretty good. They don't seem to like it quite as good as this spindly Gaillardia that I already showed you guys right over here. I'm hoping whenever I get this one in the ground and keep it trimmed back a little, maybe that it'll bush out a little, sort of more similar to this one. I don't know if it will or not. Let me try kind of pull back a little. Well, I better not. I've got a tough sun fill right here. Continuing on, this is a Nook lavender. I think it's a type of Spanish lavender. Anyway, it's the kind that has the it's the kind that has the blooms on top, of course, but it has the little flags on top of the blooms or all over the bloom. I'm not crazy about it. I would rather have just like your French lavender or British lavender or just regular lavender, but it's done really well foliage wise. After it kind of quit blooming, I cut it back thinking it would rebloom. It did not, so we'll see. Pollinator wise, it was really about a 0, but I think that was an anomaly because this spring when this was blooming, I didn't have any pollinators here, nothing for all spring long. It was just the worst spring I've ever seen. Just no butterflies, no bumblebees, no honeybees, no nothing. And of course, you know, this one never had a chance to draw anything because there wasn't any pollinators here. Right here is a dwarf type of goldenrod called Sweetie. I wasn't very impressed with the pollinators on it either, so I dug it up, and then I got the feeling like I hadn't gave it a good enough chance, so I replanted one here and a couple more in this pot. It had such nice roots on it, and I felt I didn't give it a chance, so I'd give it one more little bit of a shot next year to see if it could win me over. Right here we have another honeysuckle of some sort. I'll put it on the bottom. All my honeysuckles that I'm planting are, like I say, Native American or Native American cultivars. Okay, I think that almost covers everything. No, it doesn't. I am not letting you guys off that easy. Keep on going here. This is a wisteria. This is Amethyst Falls Wisteria, and it's in its second season. It's trying its best to climb. However, like the honeysuckle, one reason the honeysuckle is not doing so great yet, and this is not doing so great, is because we have a lot of squirrels that also climb the same poles that these vines are trying to climb, and they just keep tearing them down, tearing them down, tearing them down. So what's going to have to happen is that once the vines get nice and thick, like what this is right at this point, then it can climb, then the squirrels are not going to accidentally break it off. But the growing tips just get broke off time after time. So after a certain period of time, it's going to get robust enough to climb on up there, but it's going to take a while. And here is the Nanho purple mother plant that the two cuttings come from. This one is really about 6.5 foot tall. And right here is a euonymus bush. Eventually, I'm going to take this out of here. It is really pretty in the spring with the variegated foliage and all. It just looks much nicer in the spring than it does right now. I would say for some reason, but I kind of know part of the reason. Part of the reason it looks as bad as it does is I have this suet feeder right here, and all the suet, the suet crumbs just drop right down into the middle of this thing, and you can tell how it's affected it. It's not affected it in a good way. I need to put a tray on the bottom of this triple suet feeder here So all the crumbs won't, or so it'll eliminate part of the crumbs from falling down. But really I would like to eliminate this plant altogether anyway, because it's just taking up a large amount of room here, and pollination wise it's a zero, absolute zero. So eventually, maybe not next year, I don't know, but this is going to be on its way out. What I'd love to put here, there's a variety of Daphne, I think, and Daphne itself I think maybe a type of lilac, but there's a variety of Daphne called Perfume Princess, which is not available here in the United States yet, not that I found. I'm hoping it will be this spring, and it's definitely, if I can find a Perfume Princess Daphne, it'll go here. It's reported to be one of the most fragrant shrubs in existence. Definitely the most fragrant Daphne in existence, and some people online say the most fragrant shrub, period. So we'll see. Maybe again more hyperbole, but that's what they say. So I'm gonna put a Perfume Princess Daphne in here someday. And really the plant which kind of anchors this whole garden is, I'm pretty sure this is a type of viburnum right here. Just don't ask me what kind of viburnum it is. It has red berries on it here in the fall. It has really small white flowers on it in the spring, smaller than a lot of white flowers I've seen on viburnum. So I don't really have any idea what kind it is. The leaves turn a really pretty red in the fall. So next to it is a wild cherry tree. Apparently, I don't know, this never has any cherries on it, but the birds, I mean, the viburnum and the cherry tree both give the birds a really great place to roost. I feed the birds here. I've got 3 or 4 different bird feeders out, and eventually I will do a bird feeding video. But here's one strange thing about this wild cherry, and it is wild cherry because it came up here all on its own, and it had a struggle to come up, because I want you to look at how the root kind of comes out from what used to be my waterfall here. So, you know, that's a root. That's not a rock right there. That's the root. And here's another thing I'm going to have to do, I guess, because I think it would not be advisable to leave this like this. Right here, you can see that it's growing in to a rock right there. I mean, the rock is probably, I'm going to say, embedded probably as much as a ½ an inch into the plant, and it goes, you know, kind of the full length of the trunk. So what I need to do is temporarily remove this top rock, get something and bust this bottom rock off right here, except, I don't know, then it's going to expose this and leave a big gaping wound in it. So I'm a little bit uncertain what to do here, whether just, seems like if I leave it alone, this is going to get deeper and deeper and deeper into here, and then it's going to weaken it and maybe fall over sometime the other direction, because it's just structurally compromised. So I don't know what I'm going to do there. I'll probably do something someday. Hopefully save this tree. And this rather nondescript looking plant here is a Sonic Bloom Weigelia. I planted it just from a very small plant this past spring, and it may not look like much now, but it should. It's been a healthy plant, and I think it will eventually really be a top performer for me, because I've pinched a whole lot of blooms out of it already, and I've been pinching the blooms, so it would be putting more energy into the plant. All this stuff you see here, besides the cat. Okay, get her down there, Susie. All this extraneous stuff you see growing is sunflowers. And that of course comes from all the sunflower seeds. And the seeds, I'm thinking, is really enriching my soil quite a bit. Okay, I think that pretty much does it. Let me go ahead and back up. I don't think I've given you guys much of an overview of things here. So I'll back up and run my mouth a little bit longer. I have 3 garden beds primarily that I'll be showing on this channel, plus you know, other plants dotted about here and there. So yeah, this is bed number 1. So here this fall I'll show the other 2 beds, plus I'll wind up you know, showing my grow room inside where I do my cuttings. That's it for the inaugural video of the Pollinate or Die channel. So long.